Okay, we'll get going. We're still sort of missing a few people that had signed up to come along, but they can just come in as and when they're ready. If you want to re-top up drinks, or you need to nip out to the loo, don't sit there in pain. Please do pop out. I won't be offended. I'll also just let you know that we are live streaming this as well, which is why there's a laptop sat on that chair at the front there. So this is out on our YouTube channel at the moment. So if there's anyone that you know maybe wanted to come along, or you want to share what happened today with them later, if you head over to Crowdfunder's YouTube channel, you'll see the Stirling workshop live stream on there, so you can relive the magic again. Or do feel free to share it with anyone. So my name's Sammy. I am Head of Coaching, Project Innovation, got a few other exciting job titles at Crowdfunder. I'm normally based down in our HQ in Newquay in Cornwall, where my colleague Bertie is also normally down there with me. We're up here in Scotland to launch Crowdfund Scotland, and we have already 3 incredible new colleagues in the room who you're going to be hearing from later on, who are part of the Crowdfund Scotland team. Hiya, Sharon. Come on in. So you'll be hearing from them and meeting them and finding out what Crowdfund Scotland is, along with sort of how crowdfunding works, pots of funding, various bits and bobs that we're going to cover over the next hour. So, get going. So a bit about Crowdfunder first of all. Has anyone here ever been on the Crowdfunder website before? A little bit, yes. Has anyone pledged on a project on any site on a Crowdfunder? Yeah. Does anyone run a project? Brilliant. So to be honest, that's probably about the spread in most workshops. A lot of people kind of heard of it, not really sure. A few people done a bit of pledging and want to know what they can do with it. So Crowdfunder, as I say, we're UK based. We are nothing to do with the American site Crowdfunder you might have heard of. I do get asked that sometimes. So we are essentially a rewards-based platform. We also do donation crowdfunding, and I'll talk about what the differences are between the different types of crowdfunding in a minute, because I know there's quite a few terms flying around. But essentially, we exist to tackle society's challenges by making ideas happen, which is a nice sort of one phrase, really, which I think sums up what we do really well. If you look at some of the other crowdfunding platforms, there's a lot of platforms that cater for sort of new tech, gadgety, gizmo ideas and people who want to contribute towards that kind of thing. We sit very much, I think, to the side of that, very much in the community space. I think if you go on Crowdfund and you have a look at the projects that are there, the thing that they tend to have in common is that they're doing some good and they have a community around them. So if you're sitting here thinking, yeah, I think that's kind of what we're about, good, you're in the right room. So we're just going to share a little video to sort of illustrate a little bit more about some of the projects that we have and what we do. So I'll let that.
We decided that crowdfunding campaign was going to be about building a village hall to last. My name is Jackie Robertson and I live on the Knoydart Peninsula. And I've been here for over 20 years and I'm a member of the local community.
We probably had quite a good time with it. We got to know each other a wee bit better, which is all good, you know, in a small community. You think you know everybody really well, but actually putting yourself in different scenarios with people definitely changes how you appreciate them.
Knoydart is a remote peninsula on the west coast of Scotland. We are 7 nautical miles from the mainland and you can only get here by boat. Beautiful peninsula with a population of around about 120 people. The hall for Knoydart is a huge, huge part of our community because it's the social fabric, it's the cohesive part, that's what keeps us all together.
One of the only social spaces we have, and it's the only space that we can have cultural activity, and all those are massively important for some place like this. You're reasonably remote, and would like socialising and like cultural activity, and so music and theatre and literature all kind of can only happen in this space at present.
We looked at a number of different platforms, funding platforms, and we kept coming back to Crowdfunder because of the robustness of the programme and the quality of the different, the quality of advice that was being given, and also the fact that it allowed us to choose how we rewarded our audience. It wasn't just about monetary, it was also about making them feel part of the journey. So that was what we did, and it was a fantastic campaign.
So those of you with a keen eye may notice the Bertie video. So that was part of a project that Bertie sort of undertook this year, sort of still a little bit of, where he travelled around all over the UK and visited some of the projects that really made an impact that he sort of heard about on the site, and sort of shone a light a little bit on their journeys and what they do with crowdfunding and what it meant to them. That's called Crowdfunder Stories. If you're interested in hearing about the other stories and a little bit more about Noida, have a look at that and look that up. It's really worthwhile. So different types of crowdfunding. I think it's important to do this because I feel like these days crowdfunding has become that kind of cover-all term that can mean different things to different people. Almost like, I feel like the term social media. Say social media, but it actually means quite a few different things. Crowdfunding is a bit like that. There's different sites and different things that it can mean. So a lot of people, when they think of crowdfunding from sort of the early days, they think of this one over here, equity. So the Dragon's Den model. I need to raise, I don't know, £500,000. You can buy shares in my company. You know, that's how that one works. So we don't do equity on the crowdfunding platform, but we have a very close relationship with Crowdcube, our sister company, who do equity. So if anyone here is interested in finding out a little bit more about that, you can absolutely speak to us and we'll put you in touch with the right people. There's also lending. Rather than going to the bank to getting a loan, this is people more increasingly peer-to-peer lending. So borrowing kind of chunks of money from lots of people. Why people do that? Good question. You can tend to get not bad sort of rates of interest on it, pretty good ones compared to what you might be able to get in more traditional funding. And as someone who might choose to be a lender, again, similarly, there's some quite good rates of return, perhaps compared to what you can get traditionally. Of course, with same with equity and lending, your money's at risk, your capital is at risk, and it's not guaranteed that you'll ever get it back. Let's say, and you might have heard of platforms like Funding Circle that do lending. So as we come down to this end of the screen, this is kind of our arena. Rewards is the big one. That's our kind of bread and butter. That's where we started, and that's what the majority, I would say, of projects on Crowdfunder are. And we'll explain kind of, this is all going to be focused around rewards today. But rewards is really simple because you don't actually give away any percentage of your company or of what you're doing. You don't have to pay the money back. You retain complete ownership of your organisation, your business, and once you receive that money, it is yours. That's it. What do people get in return? They get this thing, a reward, you know. What is the reward varies massively from project to project. It might be a physical thing, it might be an experience, it might be some sort of sponsorship, a memento. There's all sorts of different things, and we will go through some examples and how rewards work as well a bit later on. And then either side we've got donations, which I think is the easiest, most obvious one, where people can literally just donate towards a cause, something that they hold dear, just chuck some money in. We also do that on Crowdfunder. And then we have community shares, which is probably the one the least people have heard about. Has anyone here heard about community shares before? Oh, we've got one. So community shares is particularly useful if you're trying to, let's say, save a community asset. So what we mean by that is something big and physical. So Hastings Pier, village shop, the local pub, We've even had swimming pools. So something that the community decides to take ownership of to keep it running, kind of the community's benefit. I think the pub is the most obvious one, local pubs shutting down, villagers come together and buy and run it. So that works similar-ish to equity in that people are buying shares, but there's a few kind of distinct differences. For example, in the legal setup of the organisation, so you have to be, for example, a community benefit society or cooperative, and everyone who has any amount of shares gets one vote. So it's not one vote, one share. It's if you have any shares, you get one vote. So it's much more equal. So again, if you're thinking, actually, I know something that might need saving, please do come talk to us later about that. But we're really going to focus on rewards today. So a little bit on the numbers of Crowdfunder. So I find with this, it's a bit of us standing here blowing our own trumpet slightly, but that's not what it's intended to do. Really, it's about kind of showing the scale of crowdfunding, because I think people more and more have this sense of the fact that crowdfunding is actually sort of here to stay. It's not just this niche thing that a few people on the internet are doing now. It's becoming part of society, it's becoming part of government. Obviously, we have relationships with LEADER, with various local authorities, councils and corporates as well across the UK. So it's kind of here and it's real. And the fact that we have, up to sort of 200 new projects every day come to just our site really shows you the scale of that. And the fact that it isn't just this sort of niche sort of thing that maybe a few people are doing now. And that kind of number, that 60 million, is almost a bit baffling, to me. I've been with Crowdfunder from the start when we were in an office above a surf shop in Newquay to sort of where we are now. And to think that, and I don't say we've raised 60 million because we haven't. People in the crowdfunding community have raised £60 million. And they're people just like you who came to one of these and sort of said, right, what's this all about then, Sally? And that's where they kind of got to. So why do people crowdfund? And the most obvious one is funding. Yeah, probably most people in the room probably turned up because need some cash. Yeah, good, nodding. So that's the obvious one. It's in the name, the funding. Yeah, it's absolutely about the funding, crowdfunding. But for a lot of projects, I think some of these things that they also get, they weren't necessarily expecting, but sometimes they even end up superseding the funding in terms of benefit. And actually, we do have projects that come to crowdfund and the funding is kind of secondary. And really, they're really after, let's say, that validation piece. So, for example, you're thinking of opening a bakery in your local village. Do you, go through all the effort of, sorting it all out, setting it up, renting your space, buying your ovens, opening day, open the doors, let's find out if anyone likes bread. Crowdfunding gives you a really good way to find out if you've got some appetite, a customer base, what it is you're looking to do. And, a bakery is one that we actually see quite a lot of on Crowdfunder. But it's the same for community organisations as well. If you're thinking of setting up, a new sports club, for example, in this town, does anyone want to come along, or am I wasting my time here? It's a really good way of testing that audience. And actually, people sometimes even use rewards as validation. And I crowdfunded my own business that I run just over a year ago now. And for me, I had lots of different rewards. And part of what I was doing was testing which were going to be the most popular ones. So that when I sort of launched fully, I knew which were going to be the ones I was actually going to offer. And awareness is, I think, far and large the biggest one. You cannot crowdfund without massively raising awareness about what you're doing. Because crowdfunding is essentially shouting from the rooftops, the loudest that you ever have done to everyone that you know. It's part and parcel. So I remember working with a project a couple of years ago now, a project based in Brixton, and they were trying to raise money. It was a vintage clothing shop because they really wanted to spend some money on PR and press and raising their profile. I remember having a hilarious conversation with them just before they closed, saying all of our things that we wanted to achieve, that we were raising the money for, we've already done by crowdfunding. So we wanted to be featured in this magazine, in this piece of press. And they featured the fact that we're crowdfunding in there. So we've got to find something else to spend money on. Brilliant. And you know, sort of outside of, you know, the big things like press and that kind of thing, as you know, the chap from Neudart was talking about. This is something that I found, is that when you're sort of working away behind the scenes on this passion project, perhaps it's often the case that you know, even the people closest to you aren't necessarily fully aware of that, because you're not, you know, talking to them about it every time you're at the pub, etc. There's other things on. And when I crowdfunded for my business, which is a jewellery business, I'm also a jeweller, loads and loads of my friends had no idea that this was something I'd been doing sort of behind the scenes in my little studio at home, and they were really thrilled to find out about it. They were really, really pleased and excited and wanted to support it because they thought it was amazing. And actually that kind of awareness just within your very local community, something that you'll find will just boom. With advocates, we do find that people who support crowdfunding projects, they tend to be on for the long haul. It's a bit of a sort of strange psychology thing. That if you take part in making something happen, kind of from that early stage, that seed stage, they tend to be the people that will still be coming and buying bread from your bakery in a year's time. And every time they walk past it, they'll say to them, you can't help it. You can't help it. And I am a prolific ledger. I'm, I don't know, happy to say, or by balance maybe not so, but I pledge on a lot of projects, and I absolutely am the hugest, you know, advocate for all of them, because I know the stories, I know the people behind them, because they've shared that part with me. And finally, the extra funding. So extra funding is something that's quite unique to Crowdfunder, in that we have these partnerships with other organisations who have these pots of what we probably normally call grant funding, match funding. It's literally that. They have that funding to give away. Obviously, there's criteria for each fund, and there's a certain amount that they'll give away. But what's true for all of them is you have to be crowdfunding on Crowdfunder. Then you set your project up, you put it live, and at that point, you know, if you go through the application process that we have, these guys are going to talk about that, you will literally receive a pledge straight onto your crowdfunding project. So no massive, long council processes to go through, meetings to attend, none of that, straight on. So I'm going to hand over to Bertie now, the superstar from the video, just to embarrass him a little bit, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the technicalities.
Can you please do my slides?
Yeah.
Hi everyone. When we started the workshop today, we had a quick show of hands to see who had pledged on a project, who'd run one. But had anyone heard of crowdfunding before today? Yes. So we've all heard of it. As Sammy mentioned, crowdfunding maybe 5 years ago would have returned some blank faces today. But it's more and more becoming a more mainstream, well-known stream of finance. But there's quite a big knowledge gap between how crowdfunding actually works compared to how we believe or what we've heard of it so far. So this is essentially how crowdfunding works. Do we all agree with that slide? You've had a couple of pints in the pub, you've had a really, really good idea, and you think, okay, I'm going to crowdfund it, tell a few mates, they'll crowdfund it, get it on the website, and it gets funded. Sounds pretty good, right? But unfortunately, as great and sweet as that may sound, that's not the reality behind crowdfunding. And the quality and the success of crowdfunding is down to much more preparation and hard work. So how it really works is that you visit our website, which is crowdfunder.co.uk, and you start crowdfunding, and you start to fill out details about your project. And that includes who you are, what it is you're trying to do, why it's so important, and how exactly this is going to happen. You're going to set yourself a target, the amount that you need to raise, and the length of time that you're going to crowdfund. We traditionally recommend is 4 weeks. So once you've created your page, you've clicked the Go Live button, you're running for 4 weeks, what you'll have is a link, the web address, the URL, and you're going to be sending that out to every group individual organisation or community that you've identified who might share a relevant interest in your project. And through your story, you've hopefully educated them about what you're trying to do and inspired them to get behind you. And they, within those 4 weeks, will either donate because they like the idea, not expecting anything in return, or choose a reward to help you get to your target. Does that sound pretty straightforward so far? Okay, good. So this is, I would recommend for everyone to go and visit the website. So I appreciate all of the different projects that you might represent today may vary quite substantially. But essentially, you can crowdfund for one of those, you can crowdfund for everything. And the website is a big archive of all of the projects that historically have used our website and funded successfully or not successfully. And you can find by category what other projects similar to yours have been there and done that for you. So this is what we'd expect to see from a crowdfunding page. This is for an eco larder in Edinburgh. So a zero waste shop where they provide a range of different products and ingredients without any plastic packaging, where you can go with a recyclable box to go and refill instead of continually purchasing a lot of plastic. They have their title at the top. So that's your big bold statement that's going to capture the attention of and the headlines of your audience. You have your project aim down here, which is a short and sharp, concise summary of what it is you're hoping to achieve. This is where your video lives. You can run a crowdfunding campaign without a video. So your hero image could live there. We recommend that you do put a video together, but this is where that will be. You've got your social media links underneath that video, which is your Facebook and your Twitter, if you've got them. And then beneath that, we've got our description and your rewards. So anyone visiting your page can scroll down, pick up the key information about your project, and understand what it is you're hoping to do, and how you're going to do it, and what rewards they can find to contribute towards your campaign. This, as a coach, what we do is we analyze the website and pick out a few particular projects that we believe we can add value to. And an example like this, what we're missing here is headings. So we always want to, when you're putting your project together, move away from just block text, because we know that our attention span on the internet is not particularly long. So you want to make it as easy as possible for people to quickly digest this information. So those titles about your project will help people split apart that information. And furthermore, you want to include a range of imagery in there so that it really paints a clear picture to your audience about what it is you're doing, and encourages them to spend as much time as possible lingering on your page. But essentially, this is a really good opportunity to write a pitch for your business or your community group, because it gets you to put your story down in a relatively short fashion, and get some of your key points across to encourage people to get involved. So it's always going to be a good exercise as a pitching document anyway. So when you're visiting potential partners, organizations, you can almost take that with you, and that's a summary of what your intentions are. So I'm just going to hand over to Jenny. Jenny's one of our new coaches here at Crowdfund Scotland.
Hi everyone, so I'm Jenny, and I'm going to talk to you about Crowdfund Scotland, which is the exciting new initiative that's brought us all here today, that's allowed us all to get a base up in Scotland. So I'm Jenny, and I'll be one of the coaches here, and the other two are at the back, there's Amy and I as well. So Crowdfund Scotland is a partnership with Leader. I don't know if any of you have heard of Leader before. They're a group in Scotland who help with rural areas and communities. So we have a partnership with them. They have 21 areas, but we're directly coaching 9 of those areas. So if you and your project lie within one of those 9 areas, you'll be eligible for one-to-one coaching and extra support for your project, which is really helpful to make sure you get everything on the project page correctly, you get the best rewards and everything lined up as well. So these are our 9 leader areas that we're working with at the moment. There is the opportunity in the future if other areas want to join that they can do so. So if you are in those areas, you'll be able to get this extra coaching, but it's worth remembering that these workshops are open to everyone. So even if your project is out with the area or you have people that you know of that are out with this area, they come along to the workshop and they can speak to us. We'll have lots of these lined up over the next couple of months. So keep that in mind. I think with the next slide, that's me. I'll hand over to Emmy, who's going to talk about coaching and support. So as part of Crowdfund Scotland, we have our 3 expert coaches. So that's me, Molly, and Jenny, and we offer you one-to-one coaching. And there is also supplies on our website. We've got fantastic guides for how to create a successful program. And we're also running an accelerator group on Facebook, which you can join, and I'll have another slide about that later. And we will be hosting a range of workshops around the areas, and you can find information on them on our website. And they're all free of charge. And if you ever have any difficulties in the crowdfunding website when creating your project, we also have a really great customer support. So the accelerator program is a 3-week course on Facebook, and it's currently running since the 16th of January, but the sign up is still open until Monday. So you can find that on the website. And you'll be
that on your website?
Yeah, on the Crowdfunder website, and then you sign up your email there and you get invited to the group. Yeah. So Accelerator is a really great place to kind of have peer-to-peer feedback on your idea and test your idea and pitch it and see what other people think of it, other people who are in the same situation. And us coaches are also going to be on there to give you any tips and advice, and also tasks for every day for you to think about. And also on our website at Crowdfunder, you can find our really great guides for creating your project. So planning your project is all about creating your team and thinking about who you have working with you in your project, and also thinking about your crowd, like who is going to be interested in this, and creating your network map. It's really important to get the planning right before you go live. And then the second guide is all about creating your project. So that's really about creating that project page online, how to tell your story, and setting up a realistic target. And third guide is all about marketing. So it will give you tips about how to publicize your project and what are the best channels to do that. And also a bit of information how to send updates to your supporters and how to find new supporters. So they're really great guides. They're only like 10 pages long each, so don't be scared. So yeah, that's a great guide. Okay.
Thank you. So when you're putting together your project, within the preparation stage, lots of hands make light work. So rather than putting all of the responsibility on your own shoulders, I would suggest finding some other people within your community or business who can help with the process, help the process and put together a good campaign. It's really important, like we saw on that project page, to boil down what your aspirations are before you go any further. So to be able to communicate your story well, you have to very much understand it yourself. And the benefit of putting that page together is that once you've done that, every time you're speaking to someone in your area, in the pub, on a dog walk, you can really summarize what it is you're hoping to achieve. So on the next one, please. So this is just an example of a really wonderful project. Has anyone seen these bikes around town?
Yeah.
So funny enough, this is actually quite recent. So within about the last year, the first Cycling Without Age project landed on our website. This was off the back of a BBC Three documentary called Amazing Humans, about different people who are making really, really incredible difference in our society today, and testing and finding positive solutions for some of those challenges that we're facing in society. So Cycling Without Age started in Denmark, and a young chap called Fraser and a woman called Christine decided to start their own chapter of Cycling Without Age, which was, the first one was in Falkirk. And then they started to raise money off the back of the BBC Three campaign to get more chapters throughout Scotland, and to buy more trishaws, which are these bikes, a person pedaling at the back and a carriage with two people at the front. And they eventually raised 43,000 from 378 supporters. I think when we look at that, back to the benefits of crowdfunding slides, what they were able to do is really tell their story. They raised the money to certainly purchase more trishaws and open more chapters, but the awareness of the number of supporters that they got and the publicity, it actually forced the government to get involved, and it's since become a government initiative as well. So that really gave them the platform to shout about what we, and in Scotland, believe to be important in our local areas. And since there are a number of different chapters around Scotland who are taking elderly residents out on bike rides from care homes, essentially tackling social isolation. So who might want to support your project? This is about the first slide when we said, okay, if you're putting your project out there, who's going to fund it? We don't just put it on the website and sit back and think, done all the hard work, it's going to start raking in the cash. You want to have a really good and clear understanding of who is going to be interested in supporting your project. And that all comes down to the preparation phase. So that planning guide that Ellie was showing us earlier will give you lots of different exercises to break down your audience and understand who's going to share an interest in what you're doing. So that by the time that you go live, you've got 4 weeks of a targeted approach where you're finding those people who are relevant and getting them on board and their support. So a really good place to start is to break your project down into different interests. So we know from Cycling Without Age, it's predominantly about cycling. So who might share an interest in that? If you're looking at Stirling, for example, if they're opening a chapter, what cycle groups, bike shops, exercise clubs might exist in this town already? We know that it's to support the elderly population across the country. So these are care homes, maybe it's local charities, Age UK, maybe that's individuals. So over here we've got people in the area who might have a status, could be the mayor, could be an MP, could be a business owner, but people with access to wider groups of people who you can get on board during your campaign to help promotion. And particularly with this campaign, we all have elderly relatives, and many of us know someone who's in a care home. So it's about really conveying a clear message to people about the state of mental health in care homes and providing a positive solution to challenge that. and getting people on board on a really personal and local level, because we all appreciate it, even if we're not a keen site. So this is probably the most important exercise that you'll do, and I'd suggest it's a really good bit of work to do even if you're not crowdfunding. This is what we call a network map, and it's quite a straightforward mind map exercise where you start by getting your team together, big sheet of paper, and you start listing out exactly who your audience is. So those are the people that we know who exist in our world already, and those that we hope to know during the campaign. And what this will do is then give you a really good idea of where the money's going to come from, and then help you build an approach to reach out to each of these groups. So it's very important to start with your personal network. And I think when we begin this exercise, we think, okay, who do we really know? But collectively, we know quite a lot of people. So if you're able to get your friends on board, if you've got maybe a team of 5 people, I'm sure each person knows about 20 people. Well, considerably more, but that hopefully is the minimum effort that they'll go to get 20 people on board. So you can say, okay, team, we're gonna start putting together our network map. I want everyone to do a list of 20 friends and family who they think will share an interest in this campaign and who we can contact on day 1 to get the ball rolling. So quickly, then you've got 100 people, which potentially, if they've done the work up front, can do on the first day. So they've got them in a list, they can do a phone call or send out a private message, get them on board. Does that make sense? So if you're an existing organisation, you might have a mailing list, a newsletter, some kind of database which you use to keep in contact with your core audience. So it would be essential to include these and understand exactly that they're available to use and that they're going to require some use across the breadth of your campaign. So within your team, it's for them to replicate that task that you kicked it off with. Press and blogs, this is really essential for local projects. Any conversation that you have with a local newspaper should always start quite early. And I suggest when you're about 50% funded is when that's the best time to get a press release, because it's essentially already moving, there's some success, and people can then get excited and build on that. But just like in the Cycling Without Age project, what they would have done is find a local Falkirk rag. They had BBC 3 already. Sky News were interested, so they managed to really play a lot of these outlets off each other and create a lot of noise about the project. I think that theirs was almost a bit of a sensationalist campaign. It was very immediate, but that's not always going to be the case. So when you're building this network map out, you can make a list and do some introductions before you start to get a sense of whether they're interested in the story and at what point during the 4 weeks they could promote your campaign. But local people and businesses, they between them have vast networks. Certainly today, every cafe, every village hall even, or every shop has got their own database or Facebook page. So we all want to think about how exactly we're going to reach out to them. It might be that they'll be able to offer a reward if they're a local business, or they'll be able to make a pledge. But hopefully everyone, if you're able to pitch it in properly, they will agree to at least support you and share it with their own network. Facebook is a really important crowdfunding tool. So there is a benefit to starting a Facebook page for your organisation if you don't have one. I've seen someone start one and get up to 1,000 followers in a couple of weeks. So it's just somewhere that you can host an audience and that you can promote to them during your campaign, but also keep in touch afterwards. So it's a very useful asset. And for those that use Facebook properly, tend to see about 40% of pledges. Partners. So who exists in your world already? Maybe there's a previous organization that you've received funding from, whether there's a supplier or a sponsor exists already, that you can get in contact ahead of the campaign to bring them in on what they're doing and find out what the minimum and the maximum they can do to support you is. So why would someone be interested in your project and make a pledge? This is a really good bit to understand because it generally falls into these two camps. So we've either got the donation area over here where they believe in your idea, they think it's going to do some good in the world, so they're happy to give you money for nothing in return, or they want a particular reward that you've got on offer. So I think over here we had a couple of people who pledged on projects before. Is that yourself, Andy? Whereabouts would you say you were on this Venn diagram?
Oh, I was actually on the left-hand side. The reward was like extra. Maybe.
Yes. So it was you knew them. It was a personal project. Okay. Thank you. And yourself? Did you support a project as well previously? With the hats. That's you. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe I think they figure the idea, interested the idea, the other.
Yeah. So these are two different motivating factors. Thank you. And where crowdfunding works best is in the middle. So you've got a really good idea and a reward on offer as well. So I'm going to hand back to Sally, who's going to take us a bit through the actual logistics of putting a page together.
Yeah, and obviously this is a really short session, so if anyone was thinking like, oh, I'd like to know a bit more about that, what you're talking about with Facebook, all of those kind of things, see the cogs turning, don't worry. Obviously this is a bit more of an introduction. Everything that you need to know is across a combination of the points that you've mentioned in the accelerator group, and of course with the additional advice that we're able to offer. So because everyone has those different areas that they'll want to know a bit more about, don't worry, I know this is a whistle-stop tour. We can come back kind of on an individual basis and work through all those different bits and bobs. So unfortunately, if you do go to the website, you will see my face on basically every page. So get used to that. But as you go on and click that kind of start crowdfunding button, it takes you through a really quite simple kind of step-by-step process of actually adding your project. And this is just to show you you don't need any technical skills whatsoever. You just ask you a question, what's the name of it, type it in. So you don't need to know anything about creating a website or a web page. It's honestly relatively idiot-proof. So you do have the option on Crowdfunder to choose between these two. All or nothing, keep what you raise, okay? For both of them, kind of does what it says on the tin, I think. So all or nothing, quick example, I want to raise £5,000 in 4 weeks. If I don't, if I raise £4,000, all that money gets refunded back to the supporters. In full, they're not charged anything. You're not charged anything either. There's no fee to you. All you've lost is your time, potentially your sanity. Keep what you raise. Works the other way. I want to raise £5,000 in 4 weeks. I only raise 4,000. Keep it anyway, because I can still do something with that 4,000. The next question that comes is, why would anyone go for all or nothing? And there's two sort of main reasons. The first one is you actually do need all or nothing, so you can't do the thing that you need to do. You can't deliver your reward. You can't deliver on what you said you were going to do unless you raise the full amount. The other one is it's actually a much bigger motivator for you as the project owner, also for your audience. If you say, we've got to raise this 5,000 or this thing's not going to happen, and you've raised 4,900 and you're on all or nothing, you'll find that 100. So it really is worth thinking about, but you have the option. The fees are exactly the same. There's no difference. So I'll quickly talk about rewards. And as I say, there's lots more examples and kind of top tips on what to do with rewards in the booklet, so I'm going to kind of rattle through this relatively quickly. So these are the main types, and I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be, I think the first one we think of is these, the products. That's kind of the obvious one, a t-shirt and physical things. Actually, a lot of the ones that I pledge on, after an experience or a ticket to an event. So it doesn't have to necessarily be something that you already do, because that's the big one. Oh, I don't sell anything, what can I do? It can be something a little bit to one side. So, for example, we have, let's say, a cafe. Oh yeah, we can offer, a drink, sandwich, whatever. But actually, we can also do a little evening. We don't normally open in the evening, but we could do it, and we could do a supper club. We could do these kind of different things. Or do you know what? We could get people in the kitchen, or we could show them our secret recipe, whatever that is. Similarly, with things like sponsorship and memberships, often the sponsorship one we think of as being maybe a bigger pledge from a business or an organisation, but it can be as simple as, and this is a common one, you pledge, you get your name on our wall of fame or on a brick or part of a mosaic or whatever that is, and people quite like that because it's very authentic and real. It's like leaving a bit of a legacy somewhere, which we quite like. And there was a project called the Wave Project, actually, which takes disabled kids surfing, where we're from. And they crowdfunded for a new minibus to take the kids out. And they put everyone's names that pledged on the bus. And it's still going about. And I recognise a lot of names on there. I know a lot of people locally who pledged. And although, I didn't need anything physical in return, and, probably would have pledged anyway. But if I pledged a little bit more, got my name on the bus, quite nice to see your name on the bus. It feels quite good. Thanks, Beth. So a couple of examples, and I will rattle through these, physical stuff, 50 quid, and you get actually a combo of a bunch of stuff from, a recipe card, which again, they don't normally do, they just sort of make that up. You get an actual piece of something that they've baked, a loaf or a cake. Get your name on the benefactors list, a tote bag, all these different things that we can do. This one is more for sort of the sponsorship, example. So getting your link upon the supporters page, but also a full day guided adventure for up to 4 people, which is pretty decent actually, for 200 quid. This one is another shop in Edinburgh, I think they are as well. And this one, again, taking something that they do and shifting up a bit, buy a shelf for the supermarket. So put your name on it. So it could be semi-shelf, quite nice. And you get 20% off everything on it, on that shelf for a year. So totally outside the box. And finally, the classic kind of thank you memento sponsorship one. You get a 5 centimetre square over all this plate. So you can put your name on that. And when they're out sailing, you see you can spot it sort of going through the river. And honestly, the list of examples of rewards is genuinely never ending. So have a look around it, as Bert said, at some other projects and see what you can get. There's so many ways to spread the word that this slide could be considerably larger, but we've sort of boiled it down here. And actually, every project does it differently. Wherever your audience is, that's where you're going to promote them. If you're fundraising for new change rooms at a football club, we'll probably mention it at training, It will vary depending on what you're doing. And we have sort of a marketing template, which is a lot less technical than it sounds. It's basically just a spreadsheet where you say what we're going to do each day. That you can work through all of these little assets and resources that we have to kind of break it down into little bite-sized chunks. And I think this is what maybe the key piece of advice I would give whenever you're promoting, well, anything really, but particularly crowdfunding, is that you need to win people over. I think anyone who starts a conversation with starts hoping you might give me some money. Always going to be in for a rough ride. So taking the time to get people really invested and interested in what you're doing and seeing why you care about it. What makes it interesting to you? Why is it sort of, captured your imagination? Taking the time to start those conversations, it really does pay off. I think my motto is the more personal and direct you can be, the better. So we're actually slightly over time. So I'm going to skip past this and then come back to it if anyone wants to hang on. So we're just going to quickly talk about Stirling funding. Has anyone got to rush off urgently? Okay, brilliant.
So the cool thing we have with Crowdfunder is that we can offer some elements of extra funding to help your project really get going. And what I'm going to talk about particularly just now is Stirling, because we're in Stirling. And what Stirling actually offers is they match anything you raise. They match what you raise up to £2,500. So that's fantastic. Crowdfunder itself, they have projects, as you can see, nationally, and they have different kind of funding options from that. They look after more than 4 million of extra funding from our partners. So that's a lot that Crowdfunder can help put in. So how do you go about getting this extra funding? Quite often when people apply for funding, it seems a complex process. There's lots and lots to do. All you need to do is you fill out the basics on the website as if you were starting to build your crowdfunding page. I know there's a wee box that says extra funding, and you can click on that and see Crowdfunder will match you with what funding could be appropriate for your project. And they'll let you know there might be extra forms you need to fill in, just a couple, but we will, as Crowdfunder, send you any information that's required from you if you want to get this kind of match funding or any kind of extra funding that is available. It's quite handy from that point of view. It's an extra wee bonus to use Crowdfunder. So yeah, definitely have a look at that and see what Crowdfunder can do to help your business go a bit further. Yeah, so this is changed this last platform, and this is the Crowdfund Scotland webpage. We do have our very own webpage. We're not just crowdfunder.co.uk. We are / Crowdfunding Scotland because we want to deal with Scottish people. So that's fantastic and that's new and we're really excited. And if you want to contact us, there's another webpage. You can get in touch with us through scotland@crowdfunder.co.uk, on our Facebook page for Crowdfunder, or Twitter @CrowdfunderUK. So that'll be good.
So for those of you who've turned up, if you're on Twitter, we do have a hashtag because we're very modern. It's #Crowdfund Scotland. If you'd like to tweet about the fact that you came along today, we'd love to chat to you on there. As I say, we're at Crowdfunder UK. You can grab us on there, and similarly on Facebook. There's all sorts of fun bits and bobs going on there. But you can Scotland's email address is specifically for Scotland, so you'll be right at the top of the list if you want to come and chat with us. So we will leave the video playing as we sort of finish up. I'll open the doors, so feel free to stay in here or feel free to jet off. We're going to hang around just outside out here where the refreshments are. So feel free to come up to any of the 5 of us. There's plenty of us about, and let us know if there's something in particular you want to ask about, if there's a particular resource you'd like to know where it is, or anything really. Just come and grab us, okay? Thanks so much. Oh, thanks.
Hello, my name is Burgess Hay. This is my son Scott and my wife Fiona, and we are a family that design and manufacture bagpipes.
It's here in the Highlands that the bagpipe tradition began.
And we have piping in the family going back to the late 1700s. Today, there is no centre in the Highlands to promote and celebrate our national instrument, the Great Highland Bagpipes.
After Culloden, when bagpipes and kilts were banned, our hearts were broken with the clearances when our people and culture were scattered to the 4 corners of the globe, leaving the Highlands without its true sound. now there is a growing movement and confidence in the Highlands to bring our unique culture back. As part of that movement, we are going to bring our pipekeeping skills back to the Highland capital and nurture it for generations to come.
The Highland Bagpipe Centre will be a place to celebrate and promote piping from the Highlands.
Our manufacturing hub will let people see how bagpipes are made, while our world-class visitor centre will display many of the world's top piping prizes and tell the story of Highland piping history.
The centre will be developed in 3 main phases. The first phase being the relocation to our new site, which is 10 minutes from Inverness.
It will create employment, training, teaching, and performance opportunities, allowing our young people to live, learn, and work in the Highlands.
This will be a place for Highlanders and visitors to come and enjoy and to experience all things bagpipes. But for this, we'll need your help. Whether you play the pipes or not, we'd like you to be part of this story and become part of our wider piping fund.
With your help, we can get phase 1 of the project underway. And we want you to continue to travel on this journey with us. There's nothing else like it in Scotland or anywhere else in the world.
So join us, this opportunity will never come again. To be part of Scottish piping history and be contributing to something that has never been done before.
And that project's still live at the moment if you want to have a look and check it out. It's an awesome video.
Maybe they say help make